Let's start here. Does the Postal Service need to be run more like a business, as the president and Republicans assert?
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that the Postal Service could be better run than it has been for decades. But the president has been complaining about like the package delivery situation now for many, many months, and nothing happened. I mean, they could have raised prices, for example, if they feel they're not, if they're losing money on these package deliveries. But they compete in a pretty highly sophisticated and competitive market with some very successful companies like FedEx and UPS. So to simply wave your hand and say, well, it's not making money, it's not going to be that easy to turn that. And it's certainly, I don't think that right before an election is the time to be tackling some of these issues.
And that's a good point. We have a few months just to, think about if we were to overhaul the Postal Service. Doesn't seem realistic to be able to do that in time for the election. But what do you think the post office needs? Is it just an infusion of cash? Does there need to be legislation that changes the way that the Postal Service is run? Does there need to be a change in kind of the org chart or the management of the Postal Service right now? What should be kind of our priority in terms of tackling these issues?
Well, I think we could kind of say all of the above. I mean, the Postal Service, maybe Amtrak ranks up there, but it has kind of been a poster child for the problems of government running of what is essentially a competitive business operation. It has been viewed as, a sinecure, a place to get a job that lasts forever, that gives really generous patronage, where you can't be fired. I mean, how many of us have waited in lines at the post office while nothing seems to be going on in this, those back rooms where people are sort of shuffling around? So I don't think there's any doubt that the Postal Service needs attention. It's probably going to need some legislation. It's going to take a hard look at the cost structure. And I think Congress and the White House are going to have to decide, is it essentially a sort of public utility where we fund it and accept the huge losses and try to make the best of it? Or do you want to put it on a competitive footing where it has to coexist and compete with the UPSs and FedExes of the world?
Hey, Jim, good morning. It's John Ford. Good to see you again.
Hi, John. Nice to see you.
Yeah. Well, it seems to me that there are at least two distinct issues here with the Postal Service. One is the Trump administration kind of actively undermining the Postal Service before an election that's going to rely on mail-in voting more than in the past. That's one. And then two, what has to be done for mail-in voting to work securely and in a timely way, regardless, right? Which one of those deserves the most focus right now?
Well, they're both important issues. And I think one thing I've been interviewing some people that are involved in this recently, and the post office is one piece of a very complex puzzle right now, which includes all of the stimulus legislation. And the White House in particular has been making the post office an issue. Congressional Republicans, based on my interviews, the vast majority of them do not care about this issue. It is not, we're talking of somewhere between a stimulus bill of $1 to $3 trillion. The cost of all this post office stuff is not that big. So I don't think there's serious congressional opposition to this, but there is in the White House for two reasons. Number one, they want to break off the stimulus bill issue by issue. And they have succeeded today in getting the Democrats to at least take the post office and treat it separately. They're giving up some leverage. The Democrats are giving up some leverage on the bigger bill when they have agreed that maybe we'll just pass the post office spending. Secondly, I think that you have to keep in mind that the White House has their interests here are not necessarily in overturning the election results. And by the way, I think nobody has conclusively said that mail-in voting is bad for the Republicans or bad for Trump. But what challenging it does or disrupting it does, if Trump wins, then fine. If Trump loses, it gives him a face-saving exit narrative in which he can say, oh, I was cheated, I was robbed. It keeps the Trump thing alive. It fires up the base. It'll be like campaigning over the next 4 years about how the post office cost him the election. It gives him a whole alternate scenario. So there's real no downside from the White House point of view of creating havoc here.